Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenz, and in the video today, the top 10 brides and grooms who died on their wedding day. Wedding days are supposed to mark the beginning of a new shared life for marrying couples, but sometimes wedding days mark the end of life. In today's rather dark video, we explore the disturbing accounts of Till Death Do Us Part coming really early. Indeed, the statistical frequency of wedding day tragedy is actually higher than one might have thought. Number 10. Bride, Death on the Dance Floor. New York-born Kim Stroystrom was 36 years old when she married her husband of Greek heritage, Teddy F. Carbides, in Florida. However, her wedding ceremony proved to be the end of her incredibly brief marriage when she collapsed and died at her wedding. Her wedding was themed to emulate the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but ended tragically during the first dance, shortly after their exchange of vows. 43-year-old F. Carbides was a carpenter and veteran of the naval service who assumed his new wife was simply suffering from diabetes-related blood sugar fluctuations, but the situation was far worse than he might have imagined. Shortly after her symptoms appeared, Stroystrom collapsed and died while dancing with her husband to a Greek song, and she could not be resuscitated. The cause of death was acute heart failure that had come to a head during the course of the wedding. The excitement and exercise associated with the event makes the tragedy more comprehensible, but in all, the death was just a shocking coincidence. Of note, Stroystrom had been an actual poster child for juvenile diabetes at a younger age before her eventual death from heart disease. Number 9. Bride, Whirlybird wedding crash. Arriving at one's wedding in style is a common tradition, but Brazilian bride Rosemarie do Nascimento Silva wanted to surprise her husband-to-be. She decided to take dramatic entrances to the next level by flying right into her wedding ceremony location, quite literally. Her husband-to-be had arranged to come to her Sao Paulo area wedding by landing at the wedding's venue in a helicopter, complete with an onboard photographer to document their Whirlybird wedding arrival. Instead of having a spectacular wedding, the husband was left at the altar when he got the news that, unbeknownst to him, his bride-to-be had been riding in the helicopter to their wedding, but it had just crashed, killing her and all others on board. Recovered video footage taken by the deceased photographer showed the panicked moments that preceded the fatal impact. The helicopter crashed just about a mile away from where the wedding was supposed to be. Just before the crash, turbulence was encountered, followed by extensive shaking. The pilot was heard to tell the bride and photographer to be calm just before the helicopter fell into the trees. The camera eerily continues recording after impact. Number 8. Bride and groom, a head-on tragedy. It may be said that lightning never strikes twice, but two couples, one of them celebrating their wedding day, were unlucky enough to die together in a freak car crash. In July of 2016, an older yet newly married English couple died right on their wedding day when the car they were riding in with another couple, with whom they were friends, crossed the motorway centre line in North Yorkshire. Investigations into the wedding crash found that the Lithuanian driver of a 38-ton truck had done no wrong, but the car occupied by the newlywed couple and additional couple had crossed over significantly into the oncoming lane of traffic. The vehicle's speed was found to be reasonable, and the only cause of the accident was the unexplained crossing into the wrong lane. 58-year-old Paul Doherty and Susan, his new bride, were killed in the violent impact, which flipped the car over, while the driver, Derek Green, 63, and his wife, Joy, also perished in the collision. The cause of the crash is impossible to know, but being killed on the first day of marriage by poor driving is certainly a shocking lesson on the need for attentive driving. Number 7. Bride, a dream of death. Nana Mickey's of South Africa had waited 17 years for her partner of 20 years, Fana Mapamito, to save up for their marriage. In a strange twist, she died just before they could marry, on the very day of her wedding. Strangely, she told her husband-to-be that she had dreamed of a wedding day death a short while before the scheduled wedding ceremony, but they found the far-fetched idea to be rather amusing and simply laughed the matter off. The engaged couple had finished planning the details of their wedding ceremony before the 42-year-old Nana suddenly sickened the day before the wedding and decided to check into a nearby hospital. She worsened in her rapidly developing condition and died in the hospital on her wedding day, just 1 hour before she was due to arrive for the marriage ceremony. The groom received the news at the church, but pulled himself together to honor his deceased wife-to-be, despite the shock. The distraught but stoic groom asked to recite the wedding vows and had both rings placed upon his finger. Number 6. Bride, car-crushed wedding. Killing one's new wife through careless driving right after the wedding reception is a hard way to start the rest of your life. Ryan Quinton of Georgia made this terrible mistake and faced the full brunt of the legal system, in addition to suffering a personal tragedy. 25-year-old newlywed bride Callie Dobson of Georgia was killed while leaving her reception on the 29th of December 2013 when her new husband lost control of the Pontiac Firebird sports car that he was driving. The car flipped when Quinton allegedly swerved to avoid a dog, but the prosecution did not buy his story, and he was charged with driving under the influence. He also faced charges of laying drags, reckless driving, vehicular homicide, and weaving on the road. At the court's discretion, Quinton was sentenced to 15 years of probation, with 90 to 120 days in probation detention. Having failed to wear a seatbelt, Dobson was tossed from the vehicle and then crushed underneath, with no chance to be saved. Number 5. Bride. Canal accident death. Canals, deep ditches, and rivers that border roads leave drivers with little room for error, and it might make sense that the excitement and bustle of wedding preparation can bring an increased chance of driver error in challenging driving circumstances. In a shocking 2015 accident, a groom-to-be in India was faced with the news that his wife-to-be, Alamseti Balakumari, was killed when her uncle, also killed in the crash, lost control of the car on the way to the wedding. The car was traveling at a rapid speed when it violently left the road and crashed into a canal. The uncle's wife survived, but their 4-year-old son's life was lost, along with a friend of the bride in the vehicle. The bodies of the deceased were removed to a government hospital for autopsy, allowing further investigation into the elements of the fatal crash. One might not think of a wedding day as a likely time to die, but such incidents show how the human factors of exhaustion, limited time, opportunity for distraction, and excitement certainly present a risk factor that might warrant further analysis. Number 4. Bride and groom, medical professional, murder-suicide. Dr. George Scott Sampson, a Union Hospital anesthesiologist, married his new wife, nurse Kelly Ecker. He then went on to shoot her to death at home before turning the gun on himself only a few hours after their Indiana wedding ceremony. During the ceremony, a nasty argument over prenuptial agreements unfolded. Following their reception at their wedding venue, the couple hosted a few guests at home. However, the aggression between the couple spilled out shamelessly into the home despite the presence of the guests. Due to the disturbing spectacle, everyone left the premises. Once the couple were alone in the house, violence ensued. Soon after guests had left, 3 emergency calls were made by Ecker. The first call made by Ecker said that she was being beaten by her new husband, while further calls mentioned that guns were present. Both of their bodies were later found by police upon arrival at the home. Despite the bizarre circumstances of the wicked tragedy, some explanation can be found in the rapid escalation of tension between the couple and the subsequent departure of the guests. This apparently created the opportunity for this rather bizarre crime. Number 3. Groom. Death by beer glass. We all know the dangers of alcohol in making even relatively safe situations more prone to risky complications. However, the glassware that the alcohol is served in may present an unexpected hazard when coupled with either carelessness or simple bad luck. 33-year-old Brazilian Navy Sergeant Fabio Jefferson Maciel was celebrating at a beachfront reception after exchanging vows with his new wife, Guies Guimarães. At around 2 a.m., Jefferson was playing around with a bridesmaid when he tripped and fell on the beach. What would have simply been a minor fall unfortunately caused fatal injuries when the beer glass stuffed into his trouser pocket broke, causing glass shards to pierce Jefferson's femoral artery. Unfortunately, suffering from massive bleeding, he died before he could make it to the hospital. Sadly, Jefferson's funeral was held just 3 days after his wedding day. Number 2. Bride. Death by wedding stalker. Gripped in obsession and deadly rage, vengeful stalker Augustin Garcia picked the day of his ex-girlfriend's wedding to the man she loved to be the day that he would end her life. On September the 26th, 1999, just before bride-to-be Gladys Rickard was scheduled to depart from her New Jersey family home en route to her wedding ceremony, her murderous ex-boyfriend walked into the home of Rickard, her mother, and 20-year-old son, and pulled out a handgun. He shot her 3 times, killing her just after she'd handed bouquets to her bridesmaids. It was at this point that he was subdued until authorities arrived and they could make the arrest. A Dominican-born American businessman, Garcia sneaked into the Rickard home wearing wedding clothes, allowing him to blend in and then shoot her after drawing the concealed weapon. Garcia's defense argued for the 30-year minimum sentence, arguing that the man had made a momentary mistake in the span of a few seconds. In fact, Garcia, though, had been stalking Rickard for several weeks and was subsequently sentenced to life in prison, as the court did not buy claims of mitigating factors and reduced culpability. Her bereaved husband-to-be didn't witness the shooting, as he was not present at the home, having planned to wait for his bride at the church. Number 1. Groom. A boat in the head. Few things are as rare as getting hit in the head by a boat, and such a tragedy led to Hans Adrian Campbell's wedding day and day of death being the same date. In a bizarre series of events, the Texas police officer was struck on the head by a speedboat while diving in the Philippines with his soon-to-be wife. Scheduled to be married the following day, which was also Campbell's birthday, Campbell and his wife went diving just before the big day, but a disaster struck when a speedboat wrongfully entered the supposedly safe diving area and smashed Campbell's head as he came up for air. The fatally injured Campbell and his fiancée opted for a tragic pre-mortem wedding, which consisted of a ceremony conducted in the hospital bed the day of the accident, one day ahead of their originally scheduled wedding. Shortly after exchanging vows with his bride, Campbell passed away, leaving his brand new wife a widow on her wedding day. The accident that killed the police officer sparked investigation of water use conflicts and serves to show the little considered risks of getting run over by a boat. So I'm not going to ask if you found that video enjoyable, given the rather grim subject nature, but I do hope you found it interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below, and do not forget to subscribe if you haven't already for brand new videos just like this every day of the week. Also check out some videos from the archives over there on the right, and as always, thank you for watching.